Number 17. Improve Charge Beam to match Flame Charge. You know, I've always found it sort of weird when they design a clone to a previously existing move, and then it turns out to be either less effective or more effective than the move this is supposed to be a clone of, and then they forget to buff the other move. Always found that kind of weird, and this is what happened with Flame Charge, which has perfect accuracy and is guaranteed to boost speed. But Charge Beam, on the other hand, is not quite that successful. It's only got, right now, 50 power, 90 accuracy, and only a 70% chance of boosting special attack, which only gives you a 63% chance of actually getting the effect that you're looking for when using a move as weak as Charge Beam. Turning up Charge Beam would definitely not be a mistake considering how few Pokemon use it. To my knowledge, only Magnezone uses it with any kind of, I wouldn't say regularity, but still, it sort of uses it sometimes, and the other Pokemon that use it are so far down the usage list that they're just not worth mentioning at all. Even Flame Charge, as it stands, is just not so useful. I mean, it's Flareon's favorite move. Yes, you heard me. It's the most popular move on Flareon, and Emboar enjoys using it quite a bit as well. But other than that, Flame Charge is just meh. So buffing Charge Beam a bit definitely would not do any wrong. I can guarantee you that. Number 18. Improve Solid Rock and Filter to have super effective damage. You know, as they were originally advertised to do, and this time it's not just a fan side getting it wrong. Filter, when it was first revealed as a new ability on Mime Jr., before Diamond and Pearl came out, and it turned out Mr. Mime had it as well, Filter was originally meant to have super effective damage, but it was toned down to only a quarter damage instead during development. I don't know why they did that. I think, I don't know, maybe they were afraid that Rhyperior would completely break the game or something like that, but nothing of the sort happened, as you can already tell. So, yeah, especially in the case of Filter, which only belongs to Mr. Mime, which is an otherwise lousy Pokemon, to say the least, in pretty much all aspects. But that's not what I'm here to talk about. To be perfectly honest with you, this really needs to be done, especially for Rhyperior. I mean, have you seen that list of weaknesses on that thing? It's just, holy crap, it's weak to everything under the sun. So to make Solid Rock more useful, because right now, let's not kid ourselves. Try using Rhyperior and Overused, you're just going to get Raffle stomped. It's not going to work at all. So Solid Rock really needs to do what it was advertised to do, and you know that those quadruple weaknesses to grass and water, make them into double weaknesses instead, and those would be the only weaknesses that Rhyperior would have. Literally. And as for the other users of Solid Rock, well, Camerupt, oddly enough, it wouldn't do a whole lot on Camerupt, because, believe it or not, that thing only has 2 weaknesses! That's right! A fire type with only 2 weaknesses! Even Heatran has more than that! Of course, Camerupt doesn't have Heatran's extensive list of resistances either, but still, I don't think it would suddenly make Camerupt super awesome, even though it would have a single solitary double weakness to water as opposed to a quadruple to water and a double to grass. And as for Caracosta, well, it's one of those new Pokemon that they knew would probably not be that good, so they gave it Shell Smash right off the bat, and it's still not doing a whole lot. So once again, that lousy Water Rock typing could really use some help from Solid Rock. So, yeah, that's about all I have to say on the matter, and I don't think anyone will disagree with me on that. Number 19. Make Terravault users' electric attacks bypass ground's immunity. Remember before Black and White came out and Reshiram and Zekrom were announced along with their abilities of Turbo Blaze and Terravault? But they forgot to tell us what Turbo Blaze and Terravault did, so there was a lot of speculation as to what they did, and one popular theory was that Terravault was going to do just that, allow Zekrom's electric attacks to hit ground types despite their immunity to electric moves. Unfortunately, that didn't turn out to be so awesome. Those two abilities turned out to be vulgar Mold Breaker clones. For all that, this is fairly useful on Reshiram because the only Pokemon that would resist its dual stab otherwise would be Heatran, but Turbo Blaze allows Reshiram to hit Heatran for normal damage. So, as a result, I think everyone was a bit disappointed, and I think Terravault and Turbo Blaze need some sort of boost to make them a bit more distinct from Mold Breaker. So, this is the idea that I came up with. Well, I didn't really come up with it. The community came up with it long before we knew what Terravault actually did. Now, the problem I encountered when coming up with this idea is that I couldn't come up with something similar with Turbo Blaze, because the only source of immunity to fire moves is abilities, which like Flash Fire, which of course, as I just said, Turbo Blaze bypasses. So I honestly don't know what I could do to make Turbo Blaze better, something that would make sense given the whole theme of the ability, something that wouldn't break Reshiram and especially White Kyurem, which is handling itself quite nicely on the Uber ladder. So if anyone has any ideas to make Turbo Blaze a little more unique, feel free to send them my way in the comments below. Number 20. Improve the power of Inferno and Dynamic Punch to match Zap Cannon. This is something that you may not have noticed because no one uses Zap Cannon like ever, but its power was actually increased to 120 this generation. And Dynamic Punch, which is, I guess, sort of its fighting type counterpart that causes confusion instead, it didn't get the boost, and the newly created Inferno that does the same thing but for a burn, it didn't get it either. It's sort of like, remember when they first created Drain Punch, they had improved the PP of Giga Drain to 10, but that was seemingly after they designed Drain Punch, and they just completely forgot to increase Drain Punch's PP, something that they did in Generation 5. But that's about Inferno and Dynamic Punch. I don't really know why they didn't boost these two moves. Well, actually, for Dynamic Punch, I sort of have an idea, and it's because people were actually using No-Guard Dynamic Punch Machamp last generation, and so they probably were afraid that a buff would make it a little too strong. But not getting that buff had the reverse effect, because now Machamp is no longer overused. It's been just about completely replaced by Conkeldurr. So I think at this point, since, well, Machamp definitely could use some help to maybe make a comeback, and Golurk, well, Golurk doesn't even have Stab on Dynamic Punch, just to give you an idea, and it's way down the usage list as well. So I think the time would be right for a buff to Dynamic Punch, and Inferno as well, in the same vein, because I don't recall ever seeing Inferno get used, like ever. Number 21, improve Victory Star to match Compound Eyes. And this sort of goes back to the previous item, but I'll come back to that later. Remember back in the days following Black and White's release and everything was new and we were discovering things? Well, when we found out that Victory Star boosted accuracy much in the same way as Compound Eyes, we immediately thought, well, it's got to be the same boost as Compound Eyes, right? Right? Wrong! Instead of boosting accuracy by 30% of its original value like Compound Eyes did, instead it's a paltry 10% of its original value, which I guess is compensated somewhat by having it work on its partners in doubles and triples. But still, 10% isn't quite enough to make a difference, except in a few scenarios. For example, I mentioned earlier on that Fire Blast was a great option on Victini because its accuracy that way would become 94%. But I still don't think that's enough, especially since Victini is hopelessly stuck in underused right now. Now, imagine if Victini's Victory Star boosted accuracy by 30% instead. 91% accurate Thunder, 91% accurate Focus Blast, 98% accurate Will-O-Wisp, perfect accuracy Fire Blast, and 65% accurate Inferno. Combine that with item number 20, if you will. That would mean, in Victini's hands, Inferno would suddenly read 120 power, 65 accuracy, and a guaranteed burn if it hits. Now that is something that I just might start considering using. And, with all these boosts all over the place to those special moves, Special Victini might just become a thing again. And it probably would become overused at that point because it would be so much more versatile than just, V-Create, Fusion Bolt, smash, 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 smash. Now you might be thinking, well, wouldn't that break it in doubles and triples? Well, right now, as I understand it, Victini just isn't so hot when it comes to doubles and triples. So, I think this might actually, once again, it might actually be made useful in these specific metagames for all that they are played by a very limited amount of people, and Victini tends to be banned from official tournaments anyway. Number 22. Make Wonder Skin work all the time. Right now the way it works is that incoming status moves and debuffs miss 50% of the time. But we're just talking about moves here. We're not talking about offensive moves with added effects. For example, Thunder Wave would have a 50% chance of missing, Growl has a 50% chance of missing, but Thunderbolt will still have that 10% chance of paralysis, and Energy Ball will have that same old chance of lowering special defense. So what I'd like to do with that, especially considering what gets it, it's Sigilif, Delcatty, and Venomoth. That's it. Of these, only Sigilif is somewhat capable, and that's only because of its other ability, Magic Guard. And would you want to give up Magic Guard for what Wonder Skin is now? No, I definitely wouldn't. So what I think should be done should be that Wonder Skin would grant complete immunity to those moves instead of just giving a 50% chance of missing. And even there, it's still just a watered-down version of Magic Bounce, since it doesn't bounce the status or debuff back or anything. But still, that would be a step in the right direction. As I said, the best Pokemon that gets it is Sigilif, and it really needs Magic Guard to work well right now. So if Wonder Skin were to be a viable alternative, well, I definitely don't think it would break it. And as for Venomoth and Delcatty, well, it's Venomoth and Delcatty! I mean, I like Venomoth and all, but it's just not good enough. So, yeah, just do that. Make Wonder Skin more effective instead of just, it has a 50% chance of missing. This is one of those 50% that I'm fairly confident should be turned into a 100%, unlike all those I was talking about in previous videos.